If you're looking for a healthy, simple, affordable meal to enjoy throughout the colder months, then this easy Italian-style lentil and vegetable soup recipe is for you. Layered with protein-rich lentils, plenty of vegetables, and warm, cozy spices, this is a delicious, nutritious meal that is perfect for meal prep. Because not only is it delightful when it's freshly made, so good, but it's even better the next day. So it makes great leftovers and it freezes really well. Now you're gonna notice that this makes a very large pot of soup, and that's because I do like to make extra when I'm making it. But if you don't wanna do that, you could easily cut the recipe in half or even in a quarter, depending on how much soup you wanna make. Now, to get started, I like to do all of the prep work in advance. This way, when we get over to the stove, everything is ready to go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is chop up 2 onions. Now you can use yellow onions or white onions. They will both work for this recipe. As a matter of fact, I have 1 yellow and 1 white because that's what I had on hand. So note to self, use what you have, use what you love. Ideally, you wanna end up with about 3 cups of chopped onions. Then I love to add some chopped leeks as well. Leeks have a mild, sweeter onion flavor where the white and yellow onions are a little bit stronger, so they balance each other really well. This idea was actually inspired by Ina Garten, and it really adds a nice layer of dimension to the soup. Now, if you've never worked with leeks before, be aware that the inside of the leeks can be rather dirty. So what I like to do is I trim off the dark green tops. Those are usually very tough, and I don't use them in the recipe. And then I just trim off the bottom and slice the leek in half lengthwise. Then I'm gonna run this under some cold water, rinsing both the outside of the leek and getting in between each layer, like you can see here. And you're just gonna continue to do that until you do not see any more dirt or debris and the water is running clear. Then to cut my leeks, I will slice the leek in half lengthwise one more time and then come across to create quarter moons. I'm also gonna need some fresh cloves of garlic for this soup. I like to use 6 big fat cloves. Easiest way to chop up and prep your garlic is to take the knife over the top of each clove, give it a firm tap, and that will loosen up the skin. And then once I have all the garlic skins removed, I just put them in a pile and chop them up. I'm also gonna need 3 cups of chopped celery and 3 cups of chopped carrots. And then the only other ingredient I need to prep are my collard greens. Personally, I am always looking for easy ways to work more dark leafy greens into my diet, and soup is one of the easiest ways to do this. Now, if you've never worked with collard greens before, they're very easy to work with. All you need to do is take out this thick, tough stem that runs through the center. I usually just lie the leaf open and then trim right around each side of the stem, and then it comes right out. From here, I will rinse the leaves under some cold water, get them nice and clean, and then I'll stack a few leaves on top of each other, roll them into a big fat cigar, slice it in half lengthwise one time, and then come across to create thin ribbons. So it's gonna look just like this once they're prepped and ready to go. Now that we've got all of the heavy lifting out of the way, we're gonna take this over to the stove and get started. Now, I love to make all of my soups and my chilies in a nice, heavy, enamel-coated cast iron pot. The one that I'm using here is the Lodge brand. I love this pot because it's beautiful, it's really reliable, and it's much more affordable than other pots like this that are on the market. So if it's something you're looking for, I'm gonna link to it down in the description box below. So I'm gonna turn my heat to a medium-low heat, and I'll add a tablespoon of olive oil to the pot. Once that olive oil is hot, in go our chopped up onions, our leeks, and the garlic. I'll add a big fat pinch of salt. This is gonna help to pull some of the liquid out of those vegetables and get them cooking. Give it a stir and let this go for about 10 minutes or so. The goal here is for the onions and the leeks to become nice and tender and fragrant, and you're gonna know it's just about ready when those onions start to turn translucent. So now I'm gonna add some extra flavor here. We're gonna add a tablespoon of ground thyme and then a tablespoon of smoky ground cumin, along with those chopped up carrots, our celery, and the collard ribbons. Now, collard greens are a bit tougher than most other leafy greens, which is why I like to get them in the pot early because the longer they cook, the more tender and soft they're going to become. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, give this all a stir, and let it go for another 5 to 10 minutes. Again, we're just looking to get the raw edge off of those veggies and for everything to begin to soften a bit. Now, side note, if you wanted to use a leafy green like kale or Swiss chard or baby spinach, you could add that towards the end of the cooking for this lentil soup recipe. But again, since the collards are a little tougher, I like to get them in early. Now you can see that all of the veggies have softened a bit. These flavors are coming together. So I'll give it one more stir, and then into the pot, I'm adding 1/4 cup of tomato paste. This is going to add a little bit of sweetness and a little more depth to the soup. And then we've got 1 pound of lentils. I am using green lentils, and we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. And then for our liquid, I have 4 cups of veggie broth and then anywhere between 6 to 8 cups of filtered water. I usually start with 6, and then if the soup looks thick, I will add another cup or 2 while it's cooking. Now, keep in mind, you could use all veggie broth, but I find 4 cups adds plenty of flavor, and then using water instead of extra broth is just a very easy way to keep this recipe super affordable. Now, as for our lentils, lentils are a fantastic plant-based source of protein. And for a soup like this, you could use a green lentil or a brown lentil. Both of these lentils will hold their shape really well when they cook, so they work really well for soups and salads and recipes like I'm sharing today. Now, what I do not recommend is using a red or a yellow lentil because both of those lentils will break down when they cook, so they almost create more like a stew-like texture, and they definitely will not work for this Italian-style lentil soup, okay? So you want to stick with brown or green lentils for this recipe. Once I've got this all stirred together really well, I'm going to pop on a lid, leaving the pot partially covered, and then turn up the heat. Bring everything up to a boil. Once you've got a full boil, like you can see here, I'm going to turn the heat down and leave the pot partially covered. And then we're just going to let this simmer anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. You're just looking for all of these flavors to come together and for those lentils to become nice and tender. Now, keep in mind, while the soup is cooking, if it looks like it's getting super thick, then you might want to go ahead and add that extra 1 to 2 cups of water just to get the consistency that you like. Once the soup is ready, your lentils will be nice and tender. All of those veggies will be cooked through. And so what you're going to want to do here is just give it a little taste test, see if it needs a little extra salt, a little extra pepper. And then I really love to finish this with a couple tablespoons of sherry vinegar. It just adds a pop and a flavor that brings everything together. If you didn't have that on hand, a couple tablespoons of lemon juice would also work really well. Now, you can most definitely enjoy this soup when it is freshly made, and we will usually do that. And then for the leftovers, you want to let the soup come to room temperature and then transfer it into some airtight containers. And then you can either pop it in the fridge where it will happily last for up to 5 days, or you can store it in the freezer where it will last for up to 3 months. This is such a satisfying and nourishing recipe, and as you can see, it takes a little longer than most of my recipes to cook, but it's a very simple recipe and it's really hands-off once you've got it on the stove. So this is something that you could enjoy for a Sunday dinner and then enjoy the rest for later in the week or later in the month. That's like a warm, earthy vibe. So good. Delightful. As always, if you enjoy easy, healthy recipes just like this one, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new recipe. I'm Danny Spies. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time with some more clean and deliciousness. Cheers! I love to make all my soups and my chilies in a big, heavy cast iron enamel coated, in a nice heavy enamel coated pot like I have here.